Sophie's heart pounded as she ran, her bare feet slapping against the dusty pavement. The sound of car engines and the chatter of busy city streets faded into the background as her focus sharpened. Her mother was at the hospital, sick, again. But this time, the doctors said they would kick her out if they didn't pay the bill. Sophie couldn't let that happen. Her eyes blurred with unshed tears, but she wiped them away, determined not to stop. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to find someone who could help. She had no family, no one who could give her the money, but she had heard whispers of a man, powerful man, Ethan Moore, the billionaire. People said he was cold, heartless even, but if anyone could help her, it had to be him. Her dress fluttered around her legs as she made her way toward the tallest building in the city. Mortec. The tower loomed ahead of her, its glass walls reflecting the sun, a symbol of everything she had never known. Sophie swallowed hard and walked through the revolving doors. Her feet were dirty, her dress ragged, but none of that mattered. She approached the front desk, where a receptionist glanced up at her with raised eyebrows. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her tone condescending. Sophie's voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "I need to see Mr. Moore. I need a job. I'll work for him. Please." The receptionist didn't even try to hide her amusement. "A job? Little girl, this isn't a playground." Sophie didn't back down. She stepped forward and said again, "I'm not here to beg. I just need to work. My mommy's sick, and they're gonna kick her out of the hospital. I can't let that happen." "Well, I'll see if someone can help you," the receptionist muttered, dialing the phone. Sophie's heart raced as she waited. She didn't know what would happen next, but she couldn't afford to lose hope. If she didn't find a way to help her mother, she would lose her forever. Minutes later, a woman walked toward her. She was wearing a crisp suit and had an air of confidence that made Sophie nervous. Her name was Clara, and her gaze softened when she saw the little girl standing there. She knelt down to Sophie's level, her voice warm. "What's your name, little one?" "Sophie," the girl whispered, holding out her crumpled drawing of a girl handing a flower to a man. "This is for Mr. Moore. I'll do anything. I can clean, I can run errands. I just want to help." Clara took the drawing gently, her heart aching. She didn't know why, but something about this girl's determination tugged at her. She stood and glanced back at the receptionist. "I'll take her to Mr. Moore." Sophie followed Clara, her eyes wide with hope. She had never been inside a building like this before. The polished floors, the gleaming glass walls. It was a world so different from the one she knew. Clara led her to a large office with a glass desk, where Ethan Moore sat, buried in paperwork. He didn't even look up as they entered. "Mr. Moore," Clara said softly, "there's a little girl here to see you. She says she wants to work." Ethan's pen paused mid-air. He didn't look up, his voice cold. "Tell her to come back later." Clara hesitated, then added, "She's different. She's not begging. She's asking for work, sir." The words caught Ethan's attention. He raised his head slowly, his eyes narrowing as they fell on the small girl standing timidly in front of his desk. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. The man was even more intimidating up close. His expensive suit, his stern face. It was nothing like what she imagined. But she forced herself to speak. I need to work. Please." She held out her drawing, her small hands trembling. "I can clean, or I can do whatever you need." Ethan's gaze softened slightly as he looked at the drawing. He didn't speak for a moment, his mind racing. A child so determined to work for him. Something about her innocence and vulnerability stirred something deep inside him. He stood slowly and walked toward her. "Why do you want to work for me?" Sophie swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "My mommy is very sick. They're going to kick her out of the hospital if I don't pay. I don't have money, but I want to help her. Please." Ethan studied her for a moment longer, something inside him shifting. He had no reason to help this child. He barely knew her. But her plea resonated with him. A memory stirred. He had lost his own daughter years ago. A painful wound he had never let heal. Maybe this was fate. Maybe this was what he needed to heal. "Come with me," he said quietly. Sophie's eyes widened in surprise, and Clara smiled, relieved to see Ethan finally show a flicker of kindness. Sophie followed Ethan out of the office, her heart pounding. She didn't know where they were going, but she knew one thing. This was her chance. They arrived at the hospital, and Sophie led Ethan through the sterile halls to her mother's room. Amara lay on the bed, pale and weak, her breathing shallow. Sophie ran to her side, her face lighting up with joy. "Mommy! Mommy, I brought someone. He said he'll help." Amara opened her eyes slowly, confusion crossing her face. "Sophie, where did you go?" "I went to find a job," Sophie said proudly. "I found Mr. Moore. He's going to help us." Ethan stepped forward, his voice gentle.
I'm Ethan Moore.
"I'm here to help." Amara's eyes widened, disbelief filling her gaze. "You're Mr. Moore." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. He looked at the nurse, who was about to protest, but he held up his hand. "How much is the bill?" The nurse hesitated, clearly surprised by Ethan's presence. $150,000 for treatment, and $50,000 for previous bills. Ethan pulled out his phone, making the payment transfer with a few taps. "Move her to a private ward and get her the best care. Now." The nurse blinked in shock but nodded, rushing off to carry out his orders. Sophie's eyes welled with tears of relief as she hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Moore," she whispered. Ethan smiled, but it wasn't the usual cold smile he was known for. It was warmer, softer. He patted Sophie's head gently. "It's my pleasure." Ethan returned to his office the next day, his mind still occupied by Sophie and her mother. He had never imagined that a simple act of kindness could change his day, let alone his life. He spent the morning in meetings, but his thoughts often drifted to Sophie's earnest eyes, her desperate need to help her mother. His assistant, Clara, knocked gently on his door. "Mr. Moore, I have a report for you." Ethan looked up from his paperwork, his gaze distant. "Not now, Clara. I need to focus." Clara hesitated, sensing something had changed in Ethan. She placed the report on his desk and took a step closer. "You know, sir, I've never seen you like this before. With Sophie, there was something different about the way you looked at her. I think you've made the right choice." Ethan didn't respond immediately, his mind still preoccupied. After a few seconds, he finally looked up, his eyes meeting Clara's. "You're right. I don't know why, but I felt connected to her. It reminded me of my daughter." Clara's eyes softened. "I understand. You've been carrying that pain for a long time. Maybe Sophie is here for a reason. Maybe she's the one who can help you heal." Ethan shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. "I don't know about healing, but I know I couldn't just walk away from her, from what she needs." Clara nodded. "You've already done more than most people would." The days that followed felt like a whirlwind for Sophie. She had been to the hospital with Ethan, watched as her mother was moved to a private ward, and received the best care she had seen in months. Amara was slowly recovering, her face regaining a bit of its old warmth, but it was Sophie's spirit that truly began to glow. The gratitude and relief that flooded through her was enough to fuel her for days. Still, there was something else in her heart. A strange feeling, like this new life she was stepping into was too good to be true. Ethan visited them often. He didn't bring gifts or anything flashy. Instead, he spent time with them. He talked to Amara like she was a friend, and with Sophie he was simply kind. It wasn't the cold, transactional politeness she had read about in the papers. He was different. Sophie couldn't explain it, but she felt a deep sense of security around him. When he smiled, it wasn't forced. It was warm, sincere. And when he looked at her mother, there was something else. A deep tenderness that made Sophie feel like, for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. But as much as Sophie wanted to believe this change was permanent, deep down, a gnawing feeling told her it wasn't that simple. She had come from the streets, after all. People like her didn't get happy endings. The life she had known was full of struggle, of constant survival. How could it just change overnight? One afternoon, as Sophie colored quietly in her new room, Her thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of her mother's phone. Amara answered it, and from the way her face paled, Sophie knew something was wrong. "Sophie," Amara said softly, her voice shaking. "Come here, honey." Sophie stood and ran over to her mother's side, her small heart pounding. Amara handed her the phone, her face a mask of worry. "Hello?" Sophie asked, her voice tentative. A cold, sharp voice responded. "Is this Sophie?" "Sophie Moore." Sophie's stomach turned. She didn't know who was on the other end, but the tone of their voice sent chills down her spine. "Yes," Sophie replied cautiously. "Who's this?" "This is Olivia Sutherland, from Moretech." The voice on the other end continued. "I'm calling to inform you that we have some concerns about your position in the company." Sophie felt her pulse race. "Position? I don't work for Moretech. I'm just a visitor. I'm here because Mr. Moore helped my mommy." Olivia's tone softened, but there was no warmth in it. "Mr. Moore is a busy man. I think it's time to clarify exactly why he's been helping you. You need to understand that everything comes with a price." Sophie's heart sank. She had heard stories about people like Olivia, powerful, ruthless people who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. She didn't know what Olivia was implying, but she knew it wasn't good. "I don't understand," Sophie said, her voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" Olivia sighed, as though Sophie were a nuisance. "You'll find out soon enough. Just make sure you're ready." Before Sophie could ask anything more, the line went dead. Amara watched her daughter closely, concern etched across her face. Sophie handed her the phone, her hands shaking. "Mommy, what does she mean? What does Olivia want from me?" Amara paused, her eyes clouded with fear. She didn't want to tell Sophie the truth, but she could see that her daughter already knew. "I'm not sure, sweetheart," she said quietly, "but I think we need to talk to Mr. Moore. Whatever this is, he'll know what to do." Sophie nodded, though she wasn't sure if talking to Ethan would help. After all, if Olivia was as powerful as they said, would Ethan really be able to protect her? The next day, Ethan came to visit just like he always did. He walked into the room with his usual calm demeanor, but today Sophie could see something was different. He wasn't smiling as much. His eyes were darker, like he was deep in thought. "Mr. Moore," Sophie said, walking up to him. "Can we talk?" Ethan looked down at her, his face softening. "Of course, Sophie. What's on your mind?" Sophie hesitated. I got a call today from someone at Moretech. Her name is Olivia Sutherland. She said that you've been helping us, but that there's a price." "What does that mean?" Ethan's expression shifted instantly from calm to tense. He looked over at Amara, who was sitting on the bed, her eyes filled with anxiety. He sat down beside them, his hands resting on his knees. "Olivia is someone I work with," Ethan said slowly. "She's a senior executive at Moretech. She doesn't always see things the way I do, especially when it comes to personal matters." Sophie frowned, unsure if she was supposed to feel reassured or not. "But why would she say that? Is she angry about you helping us?" Ethan looked at her with a mixture of regret and determination. "Olivia is not a fan of me getting personally involved with people outside the company, especially when it comes to issues like this. She sees it as a conflict of interest." "Then she's going to try and make us leave?" Sophie's voice trembled as she spoke. The thought of losing the safety Ethan had given them filling her with dread. Ethan looked Sophie in the eye. "No, I'm not going to let her do that. You and your mother are important to me now. I'm not going to let Olivia, or anyone else, take that away from you." Sophie felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she couldn't ignore the lingering doubt that still gnawed at her. What if Ethan couldn't protect them from someone like Olivia? The following days were tense. Ethan spent more time at Moretech, trying to manage Olivia's increasingly aggressive tactics. She made subtle moves to undermine his decisions, sowing doubt among his colleagues, and even sent private investigators to look into Sophie's past. Sophie didn't understand everything that was happening, but she knew one thing. She couldn't go back to the way things were. Her life had changed because of Ethan's kindness, and she wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. One afternoon, when Ethan came to visit, he looked different. His usual calm was gone, replaced with a sense of urgency. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his voice low. Sophie and Amara sat beside him, their faces filled with worry. Ethan looked at them both, his gaze steady. "I've decided that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're both safe," he said, his voice unwavering. "But I need your help. I need to take control of Mortec again. Olivia's making it difficult, but if I don't stand up to her, she'll get what she wants." "What does that mean for us?" Sophie asked, her voice small. Ethan's eyes softened. "It means I'm going to make sure no one, including Olivia, has the power to take you away from me. You're my family now." Sophie's heart swelled with a mix of emotions. She didn't fully understand what Ethan meant by taking control of Mortec, but she understood one thing: Ethan wasn't going to back down. He was going to fight for them. And in that moment, Sophie realized that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about love. A love she had never known existed. One that had the power to change everything. Days passed, and the tension between Ethan and Olivia reached a boiling point. Sophie could feel it in the air, the heaviness in the room whenever Olivia's name was mentioned. Every time Ethan visited, he seemed more drained, more weighed down by the mounting pressure. Sophie didn't know what was going on inside Mortec, but she could tell that it was more than just office politics. Ethan wasn't the kind of person to let things slide. He was battling something far bigger than he'd let on. Ethan had always seemed like a rock, unshakable and steady, but now Sophie could see cracks. And with those cracks came a realization. Ethan had been fighting for them, not just against Olivia, but against the remnants of his own past, the grief he'd buried deep inside. For the first time, Sophie understood that Ethan was more than just the billionaire who saved them. He was a man with his own demons, his own pain, and she didn't know if she was strong enough to protect him, too. One late afternoon, after the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, the phone rang again. This time it was Olivia. The call was brief, but the message was clear. She was done playing games. Ethan wasn't going to win this battle. "Mr. Moore," Olivia's voice echoed with coldness. "You've made your choice, but so have I. You may have control of your little family now, but you'll lose the company. You'll lose everything. I'm not the only one who doesn't want to see a little street girl and her sick mother change the way we do business here. You've been warned." Ethan stood still, his face devoid of emotion, but his hands trembled slightly as he placed the phone down. He didn't turn to Sophie immediately. Instead, he stared out the window, his jaw clenched, as though trying to hold back the storm inside. "Mr. Moore," Sophie whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. Ethan didn't respond right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost like he was talking to himself. "She's going to fight dirty. She's already making her moves. I knew this would happen, but I hoped I could protect you both from it." Sophie's heart ached. She had never seen Ethan like this, vulnerable, exposed. This wasn't the powerful billionaire she'd come to know. This was a man who had been brought to the edge by forces beyond his control. "Don't let her win, Mr. Moore," Sophie said, her voice stronger than she felt. She wanted to believe it, to give Ethan the strength he needed. "You've already done so much for us. You don't need to prove anything to her or anyone else. We're family now." Ethan turned, his gaze meeting Sophie's. He knelt down, taking her hands in his. "You're right, Sophie, but family isn't something I've had in a long time, and I'm not going to let Olivia tear this apart. I've already lost too much." Sophie's heart tightened at his words. She knew what he meant. He had lost his own daughter years ago, a wound that had never healed. Sophie realized then that her presence, her love, was more than just a lifeline for Amara. It was Ethan's chance at redemption. He wasn't just fighting for Sophie and Amara anymore. He was fighting for himself, too. "I'll fight with you," Sophie whispered. "We'll fight together." The battle between Ethan and Olivia escalated in the following days. Mortec's board members, divided and confused by Ethan's personal involvement with Sophie and Amara, became pawns in Olivia's game. She whispered rumors, planted seeds of doubt, and turned their colleagues against Ethan. The pressure mounted, and it was only a matter of time before the board would vote on whether to remove Ethan from his position as CEO. Sophie could see it in Ethan's eyes, the strain, the uncertainty. He was beginning to crack under the weight of it all, and Sophie, for the first time, saw the full extent of how much he had sacrificed for them. She wanted to help, to make everything right again, but she didn't know how. Late one night, as Sophie lay awake in her bed, she heard footsteps outside her door. Ethan. He didn't knock. He simply walked in, his face shadowed by exhaustion. He looked older, more tired, as though the weight of the world had pressed down on him. "Can I sit with you for a moment?" he asked quietly, not waiting for a response. He pulled up a chair beside her bed, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Sophie watched him closely, her heart aching as she saw the toll the fight was taking on him. This wasn't the man who had saved her. This was a man on the edge of losing everything. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, Sophie. I don't know if I'll still be the CEO of Mortec. But I do know this. You and your mother have changed my life in ways I can't even explain. You've reminded me of what matters. I've been so focused on work, on success, that I forgot what it means to have a family." Sophie looked up at him, her voice soft but resolute. "You're not going to lose us. We're not going anywhere. And we'll fight for you, too." Ethan's gaze softened as he smiled faintly. "You're a lot braver than I ever was at your age." Sophie's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I never believed in family," Ethan said, his voice heavy. "I always thought it was something that would hold me back. But now I understand. You've shown me that family isn't a burden. It's a blessing." The next day, the board meeting loomed large. Ethan arrived early, his mind made up. He wasn't going to back down. He had fought for so much already, but now it was time to fight for Sophie, for Amara, and for everything he had come to love. The boardroom was tense, with everyone watching as Ethan stepped up to address them. Olivia stood at the far end, a smug smile on her face, confident that today would be the day she took control of the company. Ethan took a deep breath and faced the board. His voice was steady, firm. "I'm not here to play games. I've made decisions that some of you may not agree with, but I've always made them with integrity. The truth is, Mortec is more than just a company to me now. It's a chance for redemption. It's a chance to build something real." He turned to face Olivia. "And for anyone who thinks my personal choices should affect the future of Mortec, let me remind you, business is about people. It's about trust. And I trust the people I have in my life now more than I trust anyone in this room." The room was silent. The tension was palpable. Olivia's expression faltered. She hadn't expected Ethan to fight back so fiercely. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, one of the board members, a man named Thomas, stood up. "I think we've heard enough." Everyone turned to him. Thomas's gaze shifted between Ethan and Olivia. "I'm voting for Ethan. He's proven himself as a leader. He's made Mortec a success. And he's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. I think that's the kind of leadership we need." Ethan's heart raced, but he kept his composure as others began to murmur their agreement. Olivia's face darkened, her power slipping away. One by one, the other board members cast their votes, and when it was all said and done, Ethan was victorious. The room erupted in a mix of applause and murmurs, but Ethan's focus was on one thing. He had kept his promise. He had fought for his family, and he had won. That night, as Sophie, Amara, and Ethan sat around the dinner table, laughter filled the air. The battle was over. Ethan had kept his position, but more importantly, he had found something he never thought he would: a real family. A family that was worth fighting for. Sophie looked at Ethan, her heart full. "You did it, Mr. Moore. You won." Ethan smiled, his eyes softening.
No, Sophie.
"We did it. Together." In the end, Ethan's fight for Sophie and Amara proved that family isn't just defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. Through his battle with Olivia and the challenges at Mortec, Ethan rediscovered the meaning of connection and sacrifice. Sophie, once a frightened child, found herself surrounded by love, proving that even the most broken hearts can heal. As the family sat together, laughing and stronger than ever, they knew that no matter the obstacles ahead, they were ready to face them as a united force. Together, they had fought, and together, they had triumphed. If you've been moved by this story of family, love, and redemption, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We hope you've enjoyed this journey with Sophie, Ethan, and Amara. Stay tuned for more emotional stories filled with hope and heart. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, family is the greatest thing you can fight for.